Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
everyone.
Welcome to
Welcome to
Fairfield
Fairfield
County's live
Rainmaking
through networking webinar.
webinar.
I'm Bill
I'm Bill
Presley, the
Presley,
web
the web
coordinator.
coordinator.
Could you,
Let's see. Yeah.
Hello all.
Hello,
I'm Bud Freund.
Freund.
We're having some technical echo difficulty here. Please bear with us. And rather than our regular intro, we're going to pass this over to Scott Nevins, and hopefully his broadcast is working better. Scott?
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in today. This is actually a really interesting thing for me. I regularly, before the virus, would do the same presentation, probably upwards of 10 times a month, to investment banking firms and accounting firms and law firms and most of the associations and many of the universities. So this is actually the first time that I'm actually doing this via Zoom, just post-virus. I was curious to see how it goes, so please do me a favor, feel free to ask lots of questions along the way. And Bill will, I guess, share with me the questions that you guys pose through chats. Briefly, my background: I'm one of the senior investment advisors at Bernstein, which is a very large investment management firm. I've been there now going on upwards of 15 years, built a very large practice with the firm. A key to how I've built my practice is really through networking. Prior to that, for about 20 plus years, I was the CEO. I ran 7 companies. They were either financial service or technology service companies. I used to build them up, package them, and sell them. Raised a lot of money along the way. I'm on 10 different boards, so I'm very active in the community. I'm very involved in the early stage world. I'm on several boards in the angel investor world, which is investors investing into early stage companies. So I mentor an awful lot of people on a monthly basis, everybody from students. I probably help, I don't know, upwards of a dozen or more college age students when they're doing job searches, clients, kids of my clients, as well as just from a lot of the universities that I work with, as well as my own kids. So the goal today really is to share with people in the world of networking, really pre and post the COVID virus. I think that the virus is actually dramatically changing the way that the world has to think. Somebody like myself, who normally would have breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, dinner events, meetings throughout the day, this has been a major change for me, where I literally am sitting in my home office chair from morning until night, something that I've never in my entire life experienced. But that doesn't mean that networking has to. Stop. And so today, what I'd like to do is really talk a little bit about networking before the virus, during the virus, and hopefully after the virus. The other topic that I'm going to spend some time on today is really personal branding, because it's really all in how you wind up standing out, and whether you're doing it through Zoom or you're doing it in person. Everybody has to have their own brand, and everybody has to be unique and different. and I think that that's a topic that people generally don't spend enough time thinking about. But when you're networking, it's that first 30 seconds or so when you meet somebody that is really going to stand out. And how you've packaged yourself is going to make an awful lot of difference. As I think about really my brand is really all about helping others. Having been a CEO, I've spent a tremendous amount of my time teaching others in how I present myself to people. I leverage the fact that the different boards that I'm on, right? So I talk about organizations like AIF, which is Connecticut's largest group of angel investors, board that I'm on, or ACG, Association of Corporate Growth, that's middle market companies and professionals, World Affairs Forum, which is all about different world events, Jewish Senior Services, it's helping the elderly. I'm involved in a lot of different organizations, and as I describe to people the kind of boards that I'm on, people are really starting to get a feeling for who it is that I am. What's important is that your brand isn't simply just what you're actually doing at work. As an example, I've got a session like this that I'm going to be doing actually for my firm, for Bernstein. By the way, for those of you that aren't familiar with the firm, Bernstein is actually a very large investment management firm. It's really the only major firm that actually manages money. And in a world like today, where people are concerned about their financial well-being, as you can imagine, I've been quite busy, but our focus is all about risk management and how we're able to really be much more protected than others. And as part of my brand in my day job, I focus a lot of my attention on the risk management side. But for instance, this afternoon, I'm actually doing a session like this for, I guess, third-year associates at the firm. And in advance, the internal training group sent me a short bio on every person that I was going to be spending time with, and there's about 40 of them that I'll be spending time. But it was interesting because one of the things that I'm going to be doing is highlighting for people how even you write a short bio, because, for instance, there was one person out of all of these different bios that really stood out, because most of them were, I'm at Bernstein for 3 years. I did this, I did this, I did this. But one person from our Seattle office and associates said outside of work, I make pottery, I cook with friends, I read epic fantasy series, I play with my cat. Well, what's really interesting when you're thinking about, standing out is to do, on a page where everybody else just said nothing more than just about what they do during their day job, that's something that all of a sudden starts creating a connection for people. So I think that's important when people are really thinking about when they're presenting themselves, is to talk about things that are different. For instance, for myself, I have a second home. I live in Greenwich. I have a second home up in Rhode Island, and I wound up in Rhode Island because I was trying to go to Iceland 5 years ago, and just before we were going to go, there was a volcano that erupted. I wound up rescheduling that trip. We decided we'd go drive somewhere that was near the ocean, but it was Labor Day weekend 5 years ago, and we looked for a place to stay. Most every place was booked up. We wound up in a little inn in Narragansett, Rhode Island. And the next thing that we know, we're up there for a few days. We liked it. We just looked for houses as an activity, and I bought one. And now, up until 3 months ago, we used to go up there every other weekend, year round. But you talk about those kind of things with people under the category of storytelling, and people are going to remember those kind of things. And so, again, it's not just work related. The world of networking is being remembered by other people, thinking out of the box, doing things differently. In the world of networking too, and in life in general, I personally rank people 1, 2s, and 3s. It's a very sophisticated and complicated way of thinking about the world. 1s are the people I like, 2s are the people I think I can like, and 3s are the people that I don't like. And I spend my time with the 1s and the 2s. Everybody starts out as a 2, people that I think I can like. And over time, they become 1s and 3s. And you drop all the 3s off of your list. You spend your time with 1s and 2s. And in the world of networking and in the world of building up businesses, if you're spending your time with people that you like, that they like you, the likelihood is many more things are going to actually happen in very good ways. One of my clients, that quote on the bottom of the screen here, there's no such thing as being very honest or highly ethical. Someone is either honest and ethical or they're not. It's actually something that I've always lived my life by. A client of mine said it best, which is why I put this here in a quote. But if you really step back, you can't just be very honest or highly ethical. It's black and white. You're honest, you're ethical, you're going to be telling people the truth, you're not going to be telling people the truth, you can't turn it on, you can't turn it off. And in being memorable, people appreciate the fact that they're going to get consistent responses from you. In the world of networking, you should always have very specific goals. So for instance, when I would go to an event, I had a very specific goal where I wouldn't leave that room until I had set up 3 meetings. Very measurable, very specific. It could sometimes take the first 15 minutes that I'm there. It could take till the end of the night, but I would never leave an event until I had physically set up 3 meetings. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that all 3 of these people that you've met with are going to turn out to be great contacts. But nonetheless, that to me is a very specific objective. Each person can have their own, the world of networking, it's all about setting personal goals. You want to put yourself into places where you can actually achieve your goals. That's the second bullet. The third bullet, though, is probably the most important bullet in the world of networking and in life in general, and that's following up. So if this was an interactive session and I'm sitting in a room with you, I would be asking the following question, which is, how many times do you think it takes in order to be able to, when you follow up with somebody before you actually connect? And I'll generally get answers of, sometimes people say 2 or 3 or 5, or, people throw out different numbers. The only right answer is, there is no right answer. It's however many times that it takes. I personally happen to use email as a way of following up with people after I've met them. But one of the things that we'll talk about in a little bit is, how do you make those emails really effective so that people are going to respond to you? So, because if you think of it, if you go to a networking event, you meet somebody, you connect with them, you basically agree that you're going to be following up, and then you send an email to them after the fact. We met, we talked about getting together, how about next week? The problem is that you as well as the other person probably spent an awful lot of time meeting dozens of people at the event, which means that just getting a simple email like that doesn't mean that you actually remember who this specific person is. So the thing that I think is very important in the world of networking is taking notes and really listening. People don't listen enough. They like to talk. They like to tell everybody what it is that's on their mind and what their objectives are. But if you actually think about the world of networking, about the other person and listening and taking down notes of things that were important to them, when it comes to following up, if you use the things that were discussed, it makes it to the point where the other person now connects who it is that's actually following up with them in addition to that, it shows the other person that you were really paying attention to their conversation. One of the best examples that I like to use here is I've got 3 kids. They range from 21 to 34. My youngest son is a sports management major. And in the world of in the perfect world, he wants to wind up in the front office of a professional baseball team. In fact, unfortunately, he's a junior in college. He'll be a senior, actually now a rising senior. And during this summer, he actually had an intern job with the New York Mets as a player development intern. And unfortunately, for those of you that have been watching, the baseball season at the moment is not happening. And so here's this kid who competed against 15,000 kids, got a position, and unfortunately is rather depressed that his dream opportunity at the moment is not happening. But along the way, though, he really has learned the art of networking. And a couple years back, when he was really not focused on whether it be baseball or basketball or what have you, we were at a Knick game. And when we go, we generally have some nice seats. They're kind of closed down. And he met the owner of the Knicks. And my son goes, that's, Steve Mills, that's the owner. And I said, wow, that's really pretty impressive. It sounds like it's somebody you should meet. So what he did was he, leaned over the stands, reached down to where Steve Mills was walking by and said, Mr. Mills, this is Greg, his name Greg Nevins, and said, do you have a moment that we could speak? They wound up talking for literally, probably it was close to at least 10 minutes. When it was all said and done, at the end of the conversation, my son said to Steve, do you have a card that I could stay in touch with? The guy said, no, I'm so sorry, I didn't bring one. My son did what he's supposed to do, what he knew to have with him, which is he always has his business cards. At the time, this was an 18-year-old kid, which is an important learning lesson that everybody should always be prepared. He gives him one card, he gives him a second card, flips it over and said to Steve, would you mind writing your email information down? He did. And then I'm thinking, well, how in the world is this guy ever really going to remember the conversation? So I said to Steve, would you mind getting next to my son so I could take a picture of the two of you guys together? Well, from that point forward, he used that picture as part of his follow-up. And lo and behold, he ultimately wound up meeting most everybody in the front office of the Knicks. So those kind of things work. So in the world of networking, the key takeaway here is that it happens everywhere. Walking down the street, you should be prepared. Being on a Zoom meeting, going to a sporting event. The picture on the right, I threw in there, which is, as you can tell, it's a new picture. It's people now walking with masks on. In a million years, I never thought I was going to live in a third world country. Networking can happen everywhere, and you always have to be prepared. Now, one of the things that I do, and you can't really do it on this kind of an event that we're doing today, where there's basically, you're looking at slides, you're not actually looking at all the other people, but I do Zoom meetings on a pretty much on a daily basis in smaller groups as well. And everybody these days will have their name on their along with their picture. And if you don't, you should have your full name there. And even if you don't get a chance to directly speak with the people, you can look them up on LinkedIn after the conversation. In addition to that, by the way, if it is actually a small group networking event, what's also very common these days is for people to quickly go around the room almost introducing themselves. And what I'll do is that I'll actually take notes of every single person that is speaking so that I'll know who it is that I want to follow up with after that Zoom meeting. So even if this world of networking and the current world that we're living in continues for the next several months, that's actually a really pretty helpful tip, to even think about connecting with people who you didn't even speak one-on-one with in a room, but you listened to who it was, what was important to them, you saw their name, you connect with them on LinkedIn, and you start having a conversation. Networking, as I mentioned, it's all about the other person. It's not about you. And this is a very, very, very important lesson to be learned. People go to networking events typically because they have their own agenda that they're trying to accomplish. But the problem is, and I'll use an example of a situation that happened. This was probably about a year ago. I was doing a session like this at Microsoft in New York City. They had set this thing up for senior financial people that were in transition. There was a period of time ahead of my presentation. By the way, one of the things that you should always do whenever you're going to an event, you should always arrive at least 15, 20 minutes early. The best networking happens before and after. During an event where there's a speaker, even unless I'm the one who's the speaker, and it's a riveting presentation, you're going to want to pay attention to it. The speaker really is taking up a lot of valuable networking time. So arriving early, staying late really gives you good opportunity to be able to do some additional networking in the room. But I do this as a way of really getting to know the audience so that when I'm speaking, I can be much more specific to the folks that are in the room. One woman came up to me and started talking to me about what it was that, she shakes my hand. She says, her name was so-and-so. And then she goes on for literally the next 5 minutes telling me everything there is to know about her. And she gets to the end of it and said, are there any people that I know that I could introduce her to? And I said, that, we have a situation here. And the situation is that while I try to be helpful to as many people as I can, a network is really, it's part of your brand. It's like letting people in your own playpen. And I'm very protective of the people who I know. And I only introduce people that I know to new people after I've gotten to know the new people. And so I said to this woman that, you don't even know anything about me, and you don't know the type of people that I know, and I don't certainly know if you're any good at what you do. I mean, you've described what you do, but I don't know anything really about you. So I said, I hope you're not going to mind this, but I'm actually going to use you as an example of what not to do in a networking event. I'm going to describe to everybody that here it was, there was, without me even having a chance to say a word, somebody just, had their own agenda, wanted to get all their information out. And by the end of that, it's not even a conversation. By the end of that really lecture, if you want to think of it that way from her, I had actually no interest at all in being helpful to her, because it was clear that she really was not really there to be helpful to other people. So in the world of networking, you don't want to be aggressive. You want to engage the other people. You want to smile a lot. People talk to people that they like. I do a lot of work in the entrepreneurial world, and entrepreneurs love to tell you about what it is that they're working on. But the problem again is that you really want to engage the other person. You want to get into a dialogue with the other person. You don't want to give away too much information. You want to make it interactive. Networking is a numbers game. If you go to a networking event, it's not about meeting one person. If there's one good person, there's likely a second good person or a third good person. But the goal is to quickly, talk to as many people as you possibly can, identifying who's good and who isn't. If it's a Zoom meeting, you quickly listen to everybody's background and you write down the list. And the goal is going to be to contact as many of those as possible, because if you think of networking as a scavenger hunt, you never know where the gems are until afterwards. You don't know about it in advance. It's like when people say in the investment world, where should I put my money? I want to make sure that I make money. Well, until, in the world of investments, the only perfect information is after the fact. So it's all about diversification. It's all about risk management. But you can't, unlike a casino where you're going to put it all on black or all on red or all on a single number. You don't do that. You got to get to know as many people as possible. My younger son goes to UMass Amherst, and in the first week of his school, one of his professors actually said something that I personally thought was said better than I could have said it, so I borrowed that, which was, it's all about being the purple cow. There is, by the way, a book called The Purple Cow. I think that the title is actually better than the book, but the concept of being a purple cow is to be that person that stands out above anybody else. And where this really came from was the professor was saying to the students, a lot of you guys are going to have really great grades over the next 4 years. And you're going to come to me in your senior year and you're going to say, I don't have a job. Can I be helpful to you? And by that time, it's going to be too late. The goal is to be creating a unique package of yourself along the way so that when it is time to stand out, you're ready. And so each person can be a purple cow. Each person should think about themselves as a purple cow, being different. If you're an accountant and you just say, and people say, well, what is it that you are? Well, I'm an accountant. Well, an accountant, just saying it that way doesn't differentiate you. Is there something unique about the way that you think about the world of being an accountant? Or if you help other people, if you're a business consultant, or if you're, an investment advisor, what makes you unique and different? And that's, again, a key message, not only in the world of networking, it's a message about sales, it's a message about interacting with people. Again, being remembered. First impressions, by the way, make a big difference. I wasn't sure, by the way, in terms of what the format was going to be for today. So I'm actually, wearing a jacket, a white shirt, when I normally, in my day job, I would always have a suit on. I'd always have a white shirt. I'd always have a tie. And even while I'm working in my home office, because I'm on Zoom a lot, I'm always wearing, a white shirt. Dressed like, I was going to go to work while I'm talking to people on Zoom. Why? Because the people these days, I think, have gotten very, very casual. And depending upon, what it is that you're doing, in your, in your day job, there's a certain image that you still need to have. I've actually gotten a lot of new clients over the last 2 months. My clients have referred clients to me. Professionals that I work with have referred clients to me. Why? Because, again, in a crazy world like we're living in, everybody knows that what we do in terms of risk management is better than other firms. And people really are focused on risk management right now. And so I've gotten a lot of referrals. What does that mean? It means that I've done a good job in differentiating how I go about doing what I do versus how others do it. And again, I use me as an example just because it's easier, since I can obviously know the subject matter, but each person should be thinking about themselves in that same way, because you're really a product or a service. I shared with you when it comes to networking, arrive early, stay late. That's actually the best time. If I were standing in front of you, or if we were actually had video going on here, I would show you that the right place when you're wearing a name tag is actually on the right side. So even though I can't see everybody right now, if everybody raises their right hand and looks down and try to remember when they go to a networking event, where do they put their name tag? Most everybody puts their name tag on their left side, not their right side. Why is the right side more important than the left side? It has to do with the fact when people are shaking hands, or even if you think about it on a going forward basis. Even though people will likely not be shaking hands, they'll be bumping elbows. It's still going to likely be your right elbow to the right elbow of the other person. And when you're standing, opposite the other person, you're going to actually be standing off to the left side. The place that you see the name tag is on the right side. It's a little bit more difficult to put it on that way because your arms, most people, if you're right-handed, you're bending your arm in a very awkward position, but it does make a very big difference because the world of networking is being remembered. You should always be prepared. I mean, I've never gone anywhere without business cards in my pocket, even to this day, even with, the fact that I literally walked from my house the equivalent of about 2 blocks. I mean, I haven't been to a store in 3 months. I have Amazon and everybody else and Baldor Foods and WB Mason and you name it coming to my doorstep with with supplies. But I always have business cards with me because you just never know where you're going to meet people. The best example I use here is in February, usually, we'll see what happens going forward next year, but my wife and I go to a little resort hotel in Aruba. And the first time this happened was about 10 years ago. There's a happy hour bar at the end of the day. It's a high-end place, which means that, the type of folks that I work with in my day job, that's the kind of folks that are going to be staying, at this hotel. I'm a talker, and so I'll spend time talking to the people near me. At the end of the conversation, people generally will say, well, how will I get in touch with you afterwards in order to because, I like what you had to say, I'm interested in learning more about what you're doing and or working with me. And the first time this happened, my wife looked at me and she said, well, you're only wearing your bathing suits. It's a shame you don't have your business cards with you. I looked at her and I said, well, don't you have your cards with you? I said, I have mine with me. I reached into my pocket in my bathing suit where there's a waterproof pouch, and lo and behold, there are my business cards. And so, moral of the story, always be prepared. I schedule pretty much each day right now. In the past, I used to do breakfast meetings and lunch meetings and dinner events and so on, but I have pretty much a breakfast and lunch Zoom meeting each day now. I set them up with professionals that I work with that like I would have normally done in the past. I tell people, bring your coffee, bring your breakfast, and we have a meeting just as though we were at a restaurant or a diner or wherever we would have normally been. And it really becomes natural. I mean, they tend to be half hour to an hour conversations, but it's just as though you were sitting next to them, at a restaurant, and it works. And it's a way of staying in touch with the world, even in the crazy world that we live in. I talk a lot about, how do you exit? So again, this is a pre and post, not really during COVID tip, but when you're in a room and you're meeting people, as I shared with you before, it's a numbers game. It's not it's not just meeting one good person. If there's one good person, you want to meet 10 good people, and it's not spending time with people once you've concluded that it's not a good person for you to meet with. So being able to exit a conversation is literally just as important as entering a conversation. So the key is it's time management, right? In the world of networking, typically there's like a half hour maybe before, a half hour after, maybe the whole event is a networking event, maybe the whole event is an hour or two. So it's all about time management. It's about getting rid of all the people that really are not going to be helpful to you and spending time with the people that are, and spending a lot and only spending a certain amount of time with each person. So the magic is always setting up, if it's a good person that you've met with, you want to stay in touch with them. You want to, as quickly as possible, you want to get to the point of saying, this is really going well. We're having a good conversation. We should follow up afterwards. And so what you should be doing is setting up meetings while you're at the meeting. Now, one of the things that I always recommend that people don't do versus do is people typically say, send me an email of the times that work for you, and we'll coordinate. I don't like that approach because, again, now you're back into the following up back and forth through email, and often it doesn't work very well. I'm a big believer in keeping my phone handy, which has my calendar, and reaching into my phone, reaching into my pocket with my phone as I'm asking the question, and would it be convenient for us to get together next week or the week after? When would it work best for you? If you're holding your phone, you're looking at your calendar, the other person, and you should just try it, about 95% of the time, the other person will reach into their pocket, they'll get their phone, they'll get their calendar, and the next thing you know, you've actually got a meeting set up. The alternative was shooting an email, going back and forth, and often that leads to absolutely nowhere. So my belief is if you can set up the meeting at right when you're meeting somebody, it's going to be a much more effective, much more time effective, and much more successful approach. If you're trying to, part of the exchange with people is exchanging cards, which again, we'll have to see how that goes in post-COVID. You know, everybody's wearing gloves and exchanging cards. But I believe in taking notes right after a conversation. And the reason why I take notes is that I want to be able to remember as many unique things about the conversation as possible, because as I shared with you, the follow-up is key. The more personalized you can make it, the more successful you're going to be. And if you're talking to a lot of people, there's just no way that you're going to remember everything. I suggest taking notes on the front of a card, not the back of a card. The reason why I suggest doing that is that after an event, what I normally will do is I'll line up my cards and I'll actually take a picture of those cards. I do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're like me, you probably, you know, I must meet, well, I used to meet, you know, well over 100 people a month. I'd have business cards all over the place from every place that I was. And the minute you lose your business cards or you misplace them or they get mixed up with others, all that time that you just spent got wasted. So to me, one of the easiest ways of making sure that that doesn't happen was taking pictures of the business cards. My camera is it's an Apple phone. My Apple phone does not have an X-ray vision on it. It does not take the front and the back of a card at the same time. So therefore, I found writing the notes on the front of the card was most successful. Afterwards, what you want to do is you want to discard all the cards that really are not the ones that you're going to care about. And you may want to enter the ones that you do care about into your contact database. But it's not a numbers game in just collecting cards. It's a numbers game in collecting good people. So what does that tell you? It says, don't bother taking pictures of the cards that you're just going to throw away once you leave the room. Because again, not everybody that you meet is going to turn out to be a useful person for you. I also, you know, in today's world, I take a lot of pictures of the Zoom. If you're in a networking event and you've got, you know, the pictures of all the different people that are in the meeting, I take lots of screenshots of the screens themselves. So I get all the names of the people, I get their pictures. As I shared with you before, I'll take notes down if there's interaction or dialogue from anybody, so that I'll be able to you know, pick and choose the people that I care most about in terms of following up. But again, none of these things are, in the world of networking, none of these things are complicated. It's just a matter of doing them. So it really, in terms of, you know, in summary, it's about your brand. Think about what makes you unique and different. It's not just a resume. Resumes are basically nothing more than a recording in history of the different jobs that you've done. But it's not really, you got to really think of bringing your resume to life if you really are thinking it that way. But your brand is not only work related. It's related to things that you enjoy doing. I have a boat, so I finally got it in the water a week or so ago. I've been out on the water a couple of times already. In Greenwich, they finally just opened the marinas. So if I'm talking to people about my boat, I'll have a smile on my face. If I'm talking about my house up in Rhode Island, I'll have a smile on my face. Again, everybody has things that make them smile, and there's stories that you can tell people. You want to keep everything short, sweet, and simple. So you don't want to make it long and complicated. And you want to intermix the things about your day job into the things that are interesting and entertaining to the other person. Again, always let the other person speak. When you meet people, always let them speak first. So when I introduce myself, I'll say, hi, I'm Scott Nevins. I'll say to the other person, and your name is, they'll say their name. I'll follow it up and say, and tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? I always want the other person to speak first. In the world of networking, you do not want to be the person who speaks first. You always want to be the person who speaks second for a variety of reasons. Number one, you're arming yourself with information about what it is that this other person does, which means that you can customize your response better to what's important to them. Number two, you may have concluded that this is not somebody that you want to spend time with. And so therefore, again, it's part of time management. So the way that I'll operate and meet people, I'll let them say their information. If I decided that it was not somebody that I wanted to follow up with, I'll say, well, and they'll say, and Scott, what is it that you do? I'll say, I'm one of the senior advisors at Bernstein. And I'll put a period. And I promise you, nobody will ask the next question. The flip side to that is that if it is somebody that I'm interested in, I'll say, hi, I'm Scott Nevins. I'm one of the senior advisors at Bernstein. And by the way, I'm not sure if you're familiar with my firm. And I'll highlight a couple of the key things that I think are going to be relevant to the individual. I'll talk to them about, unlike firms like, UBS and Merrill Lynch and others that resell third-party products, our firm is the investment manager. We're obsessed with managing risk, and in a world like today, we're focused on managing risk, which is why our clients are actually faring better than others. But I keep it short, sweet, and simple. And because the goal is you're trying to enter into an interactive dialogue with others. Be humble, not aggressive, right? You may have an agenda, but again, the more you smile, the more engaging, the better it'll be. And the last thing is following up. And you can never follow up too many times. Again, going back to the question, how many times does it take to follow up? Well, I follow up until the other person finally cries uncle and says, well, didn't you get the message? The reason why I didn't follow up with you, I'm not interested. Well, I will tell you the probability of getting that response is like 1 in 100. Almost every other time it will be, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get back to you. I was really busy at the time, and thank you so much for taking the time to continue to reach out. Now, that's the things that I think are really very important. As you can tell, I can probably talk for hours, but at this point, I'll stop here. My contact information is on this page. Please feel free to reach out to me if I can be helpful to you. In the world of networking, if I can be helpful to you in the world of what I do at Bernstein, or in general, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to start a business and you're just looking for additional advice. I love helping others, and to be honest with you, in a world like we're living in right now, diversions from and being as helpful to as many people, it actually gives me a lot of pleasure. So I'll stop there, and I'll turn it back over to Bill. But way of asking any questions.
Yes, Scott, we have a few questions. First of all, from Lauren. She wants to know about the icebreaker or introductory.
Okay, so an icebreaker or introduction. So
yes.
So basically, I think that's a great question. So so one of the things that, so if you go to a networking event, as an example, one of the things that I skimmed over in this presentation is people have two secret weapons. They have their eye contact and handshake, or in today's world, probably, elbow bumps. But the goal is when the icebreaker, when you're walking into a room, it's really nerve-wracking when you don't know people in the room. So unlike like when my wife and I go to places, if we go to a friend's house and there's a gathering and we know everybody that's there, my wife loves it because she'll talk to everybody and interact. I get bored in about 5 or 10 minutes because I talk to people, I get caught up, and I'm done, and like I'm ready to go. But when I walk into a room full of people and I don't know anybody, I think it's the coolest thing because everybody in that room is going to be somebody new and interesting for me to meet and learn about. So how do I get started? Well, it's really simple. The icebreaker normally is going to be if, for instance, if 2 people are standing and they're talking, or 3 people are standing, if you just position yourself, and if we had video, it would be easier to see, but if you just position yourself somewhere like, not directly in between the 2 of them, but like standing like almost next to them, at some point, one of those 2 people is going to look your way. And they're going to look your way because they start feeling a little uncomfortable. It's really a game, if you think of it. And I don't like losing in games. And so whether it takes 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, they're going to look your way. The thing that's going to then happen is going to be, you'd shake, typically I would, reach my hand out to say, hi, I'm Scott Nevins, and your name is, now I guess I'll do it with an elbow bump. And that person will then turn around and say their name is so-and-so, and I'll come back and say, and Lauren, tell me a little bit about yourself. But I mean, that's probably my 99% of the time, that's my icebreaker, which is, hi, I'm Scott Nevins, your name is so-and-so, tell me a little bit about yourself. Another simple icebreaker, you're walking into an event, you say to a person, hi, I'm Scott Nevins and your name is so-and-so. Have you ever been to this event before, as an example? All you're trying to do is have a really short interaction of getting the conversation going. And it shouldn't be so, and if you want, write it down, so that you have that. The thing that people are so uncomfortable about, and Lauren, that's a really good question, is how do you get started? And the simplest way is, hi, I'm Scott Nevins. And Lauren would say, I'm Lauren. And I'd say, Lauren, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? And whoosh, the next thing you know, you're in a discussion.
Okay, Scott, the next question is about elevator pitch.
So with an elevator pitch, the beauty of that, again, using your cell phone, is you have a recorder. So your elevator pitch should be really 20 seconds, 30 seconds tops. Not when I say to you, like, and Lauren, I apologize, and use Lauren's name, is, and tell me a little bit about yourself. If you talk for 5 minutes, by the time the 5 minutes is over, I'm probably tuned out after the first 20 or 30 seconds. So what you want to do is you want to practice. It's all about being unique and different. And you want to actually record yourself because you want to listen to yourself and see, even if you bore yourself or it's interesting to yourself, like what you wind up saying. And it should be something that just comes right out of your mouth. So you don't want to sound scripted. But in the beginning, you actually do want to script it out because you want to make sure that your elevator pitch is short, sweet, simple, and really ends with a question, so that you're really starting in a dialogue with the next person, with the person that you're speaking with. So it's something that you should practice over and over and over again. but it shouldn't sound scripted when you're saying it. And it should be, and you should be saying it with a smile. People, if you're very serious when you're giving your elevator pitch, and you seem too intense, again, that's going to scare the other person away. You want to seem friendly, engaging, and it's all about the practice. Where becoming an accountant, a lawyer, an investment banker, an investment advisor, what have you, takes years and years and years to get really good at it. Networking is really nothing more than practice, 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 practice. And now that everybody's got, they're at home, record yourself, with the video, look at yourself when you're speaking, and listen to yourself, but keep it down to 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay, the other question is about personal versus professional information.
So people do business with people they like, with people that they know. And so while, people aren't looking to hear a sob story, they're really not looking to hear lots of bad news about, if they, unless it's a personal friend and it's an ongoing conversation. But the first time you meet somebody, you want to try to keep it really engaging and different. But you do want to mix in personal information because you're really trying to get across who you are and what makes you unique and different. Because if you think of it, in a room, that's why I use that as an example. This afternoon, I'm going to be doing with a group of associates at Bernstein. And if you read everybody's bio, with the exception of this one woman in Seattle, everybody else, it was just a business related, it looked and felt exactly the same as the next one above it. But one of them stood out. And I'm actually going to use her. Her name was Ashley. I'm going to use her as the perfect example as to why even a one-liner, which talked about the things that she was interested in, was important. Because standing out is not only work-related stuff. Why do I talk about Rhode Island? Why do I talk about my boat? Why do I talk about, things that make me smile? Because I want people to know a little bit more about me. And the next time I see them, there's hardly a person that I'll meet who'll say, wow, that story you told me about Rhode Island, are you still going up there? I know that, that the virus is going on and what's going, yeah. I mean, I haven't been on a conversation in the last 3 months where the first thing out of the other person's mouth, with either my clients or professionals is, hey, have you had a chance to go up to your Rhode Island house? Now, the answer has been no. My wife and I have been hunkered down in my house here in Greenwich, but it's a way again of differentiating yourself. So yes, I'm a big believer that you want to mix in some personal stuff. Not every, I talk about, I've got 3 kids, but I talk about my youngest and the fact that he was working for the Mets, because again, it makes me smile. But again, it's different. How many people, these days, if I told you everything that my son did at school, you guys would be bored to death. But I say, wow, the kid's going to be working as a player development intern for the New York Mets. Well, that's unique and different. So that's the kind of stuff you want to, throw out there, because again, it's interesting, it's different. People will remember it, and it's not long. Anything else?
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what our sound issue was, but as we've mentioned many times before, this will be on our website in a couple of days. And I do have another question. Can you provide several examples of exiting the conversation and moving on to someone else?
Did you say 7 examples or
Several?
Oh yeah. So here, I'll go back to my exiting page. So a simple tactic is you're talking. So the first thing is that You let the other person speak first. You then conclude as an example. So for the person that you want to get rid of quickly, I'll simply say, and my name is Scott, Scott Nevins. I'm a senior advisor at Bernstein. Here, let me give you one of my business cards. Do you have one of your business cards? It would really be great. We could stay in touch. They give you a business card. You say, thank you so much. And then I say, go enjoy the event. All right. Away they go. Now, let's say that person didn't get the hint that it was time to just leave. What I'll then do is they'll generally be the same way that you entered into a conversation where there's generally, 2 people, 3 people were talking. We were talking about eye contact, handshakes, or elbow bumps. Generally, there's somebody standing near you. And so what I'll do is I'll turn around to the person next to me. I'll say, hi, I'm Scott Nevins. I want to introduce you to so-and-so, the person who I was just speaking with. We were just having a really nice conversation, whether it was or was not. And I've connected 2 of them and I'll say, excuse me, there's somebody, either I wanted to go get another drink or I wanted to go talk to another person. If there's no other person nearby, and I want to dump the person that I'm with and exit, what I'll do is, so that last one I call the old handoff. What I'll do with this in this situation is I'll look across the room. Now, there's always going to be somebody across the room. You don't want to pick anybody that's within earshot of where you are, but you'll look across the room and you'll say, wow, there's a person that I've been trying to get a hold of who I just saw walk into this room, or they're standing over at the other side of this room. I'm going to go over there and speak with them. It's really been nice chatting with you, but I'm sorry, but I need to leave at this point. Now, granted, there is no other person that I really knew that was on the other side of the room, because I'm in a room full of people who I don't even know. But if you just across the room, reach your hand out, like you're going to be shaking hands and start talking with somebody, the person that you were just with that has no clue whether or not that it was the person that you didn't know, and that works pretty well. That works very well as well. To the person also that you're speaking with, that where the conversation is going well, and but again, you're doing time management. It's, let me give you my card. We're having a great conversation. Let's set up a time to follow up this conversation. I'll take my phone out and we'll set up a meeting. So again, whether it's a good person or a bad person, and I don't mean that the person themselves is bad, it's just not a fit for you with respect to, it's not a fit for you with respect to a good connection for you. This approach will work. But use your cards, use your handshakes or elbow bumps. Look across the room. It's the old handoff. Eye contact, the same way that eye contact got you into a conversation, eye contact gets you out of a conversation. For anybody that used to drive cars, I've been in my car. I think I've used a quarter of a tank in 3 months. But in the old days, you could get stuck in traffic. And if you're stuck in traffic, what happens? In stop and go traffic, the person to your left or your right who wants to get in front of you, they're trying to get your eye contact so that they can get in front of you. Well, that's why they invented peripheral vision, so that you make sure you don't get hit by them. But I know that they're trying to get in front of me. I'm just not letting them get in front of me, but I'm also not letting them hit my car. But, so those are some of the ways of getting in and out.
Scott, last question.
Zoom, though, but
Sorry for the echo.
No, but in the Zoom world, though, take pictures of the screen, take the names, use LinkedIn to look up people who you've seen, and then reach out to them. It works.
Last question, Scott. How can you engage a valuable connection on social media like LinkedIn without an intro from someone else? And we've got about 1 minute.
So again, it's all about the personal message. So if you're going to shoot somebody on LinkedIn, connection, You can do the cheap and dirty way, which is you just click the button and say connect, and then it's your name against their name, and then if they accept it, that's great. But if you take the time to actually do a little homework and make the, and send a short message along with that, it's more effective. The most effective way of meeting people you don't know is through other people. The world of social media and meeting new people, it's a challenging one if you don't know. If you don't know them in advance. But again, it's as much research as you possibly can do in advance to try to customize it and personalize it to get over the hurdle of simply, hi, let's connect.
Great, Scott. Thank you very much, folks. Sorry for this echo. Have a great day, and stay healthy, please.